It's time for a how to sound like again. Guys, welcome back on the channel. Glad to see you today for a video about two guys that define the techno genre right now. It's High-Low, who is also known as Oliver Heldens, and Space 92. We're gonna have a look at their new release Mercury, which was just released last week on Filth on Acid. And I kind of did my own reinterpretation of this, so we're gonna have a look at what they did to make the track work and how you can implement that in your music. As always, you're getting the whole project file of this How to Sound Like for free. Just follow the link in the description. And there's even more today. There's some mixing tips at the end of the video, so you should definitely stick around until the end. And there's not much more to say. Let's go. First of all, the full Ableton session is available as a free download, as always, for you guys. You can get all the presets, all the samples, all the processings for free. And now, without further ado, let's have a listen first and then check out how it was made. So in this project, I try to use all the kind of important sounds and also technique that have been used in Mercury, and now I want to show them to you track by track. So first of all, maybe we can start with the low end, the kick and bass. So we have a kick drum here. This one is a layer of two different kicks. I have two samples here, and maybe we should take away the effects for a moment here and just have a listen to this kick drum. So here we just have this kind of transient. I wanted this very plucky transient, because you can hear that in their track they don't have this much of a big transient which sounds distorted and massive, but rather something that is very, very loud, very upfront, but not too big and long, right? And then we have a second layer which is just a 909 and delivers the sub bass and bass in general. So the two of them combined get a little EQing, some saturation, some compression. And that's it on the kick drum already. The kick drum that gets supported by a sub bass, and this is a recording actually, so I was trying to keep the original. So here I have a serum sound. This is actually just a sine wave and not much happening here. It's not too important. And there's reverb and amp on it. We have a sidechain and we have an EQ. And basically what this means is I had a pattern. I think it looked like this. Yes, it was some kind of moving, shaky pattern in the sub bass. And basically what I wanted to have is a rumble that kind of sounds a little more tonal, right? Have a listen to this. Gets just a little bit more of EQing here on the recorded track. And the kick and sub bass, they run through this chain, which is simply a limiter and some utility to get back the volume a little bit. And that's it actually on the kind of low end area already. We do have this bass line though, and this is actually very important. So we had a clicky kind of kick with a very loud but short transient, and we have a massive deep sub bass. So now on top of that we have a bass line that sounds kind of still not too, I mean, it doesn't have too much mid frequencies, but rather also feels very deep and kind of massive in that way. But it's also a little bit stereo, and what are we talking? We should just have a look at the sound, right? So we have a double saw sound here. One has a +1 in the octave and the unison, which gives it a little bit of stereo information. We have a 24 dB per octave filter, which was very important here to cut away a lot of the higher frequencies. We have some envelope on there, and that's basically it. Not too complicated on its own. But we can talk about one of the most important things maybe for this track already now. The trained ear will hear that there's like a 16th note groove on the pattern. So if I would apply this, it would look like this. So every second 16th gets kind of pushed back a little. And this is what's happening here, which makes the kick and bass feel super deep and low, but still groovy at the same time. We also have some side chaining here. We have a little bit of saturation. We have some mid-side EQing. This one is very important. So you can see I can switch between M and S, which stands for mids and sides. And there's a typical rule in music production that we don't want sub-bass frequencies in the size, right? We don't want stereo information from the sub-bass. And this is why we cut here at 290. That could also be a little lower, but yeah, at 250 or something on the sides to get rid of all the stereo sub-bass information. And this concludes the low end actually. So the first thing we can notice, we have a very strong, very deep sounding, but still groovy low end. And now we can add some hi-hats to this, and we have different stuff here. First of all, we have this offbeat hi-hat, which gets a little bit of overdrive to push the 2.5K hertz area. Subtle, but definitely makes a difference. And then we have like two rolling heads. So one is a little bit more open and also kind of moving around with this auto pan here, while the other one is a little bit like more plucky and has an automation here actually on the sustain. Can we see it? We can, like this, right? So it can open up a little bit. And last but not least, we have this cymbal here, which is just a 909. Some EQing, some side chaining. That's the heads. So you can see actually pretty basic, but for sure. Again, what do we see on those 16th note patterns? What do we hear? That's maybe even more important. We hear that there's the same groove as on the bass line, right? I chose the intensity of 57 here, so you could think of this like 50 is 0, that means no groove, and the higher we go now, the stronger the groove will be. So for example, I mean, we could add like a much stronger groove here just to show it to you. So you would click here and then maybe add like the 73 here. And now we have the 73 on here. And we can hear and also see, if we put it like this, that the way, like the distance those notes get moved around now is much bigger. So it will feel much more shuffled, which is way too much for this. We can say it like this. But the 57 should be fine here. Could also be a little less, but I liked it this way. Maybe in the original they had a little less intensity of groove. And then in the end we have a clap here also in the drums, and this is an interesting clap because it's more like a percussion actually. It's not really a clap sample, and it gets some drum reverb. This one is coming from our video about the hybrid reverb and why you should use it, so you can check this out up here. And yeah, this clap just sounds kind of nice because I think it's not too much up front, because it doesn't have this kind of very, very strong clap vibe, but rather just feels, so the beat doesn't necessarily revolve around the 2 and 4 clap. This is what I think is very cool about this sound. So this is the drums, and I think what you probably want to know the most about is the lead sound. So we can have another listen here. So the lead sound, let me just loop something here. The lead sound was made with Serum, and you're gonna get this preset. I just didn't name it yet. And it was actually very hard to get the exact same sound as Hilo and Space 92 did. So I was thinking I would just kind of make something that I feel like sounds good and also seems to be kind of close, but this is definitely not an exact rebuild. Okay, so what we have here is two saw waves. One is lowered by 1 octave, and I was playing around with so much stuff like the sub oscillator, for example. It's not on here, but what's really important is we have the noise and the filter, and we have a very plucky envelope on the noise level, on the cutoff level, which will give us this very plucky sound. Also notice that the envelope kind of lacks a little bit of sustain, which will also make the sound feel more plucky. And then we have this, just a little bit of distortion. And if you see here, there is also a post distortion filter, and again an envelope on the filter. So this is like a little bit twice, like it feels like you're doing the same thing twice, but this is actually a huge difference because we have the plucky sound coming from the filter, going through the strong distortion, and then being filtered again, right? So this is actually a difference. You can see all of the modulations here. And like this, I mean, the sound is actually not too complicated. There's little gadgets, like for example, this even shorter envelope, which is put on the tune a little bit and also on the cutoff a little bit to open it up, like just a little stronger for those 85 milliseconds. So there's plenty of those little games that you can check out when you got the sound in Ableton open. And I definitely want to have a closer look at the effects and then also at the MIDI notes. So first of all, we have the Haas effect again. So I keep coming back to this Haas effect. In the last video, we talked about the Isotope Imager, which is a free widening tool. This is like the also free version of it, kind of. So we have an echo, it's set to 100%. It's set to time instead of sync, so we can do this. They're also not linked. And we want to delay the left and the right channel by an amount between 5 to 20 milliseconds, depending on how wide we want the sound to be. We don't want feedback, and this will create the Haas effect, which means one speaker is delayed with in relation to the other one, which will make the sound feel very stereo, but also have a lot of problems in mono. But that's fine. And next up, we have this EQ, cutting the sub bass. We don't want to get in the way of our bassline as well. And then we have this effect rack with a reverb that I wanted to have on the channel directly, because I think it's a very important reverb, and it also definitely needs the side chaining with itself here. So we can have a look at this. And let me put up the echo for a moment. So you can see there's like a lot of sidechaining going on the reverb while the melody is actually playing, and then we have this kind of little reverb burst in the end. But what's also very important is the echo. So here we only have a sidechain left, that's obvious, but the echo is super important, and this is what also drives the actual track Mercury a lot. So we have this quarter note echo here with a lot of feedback and a little bit of reverb mixed to it. I don't know if that's the exact same way they did it, but I just thought that sounds amazing. I always think that adding a little bit of reverb to echoes makes this very nice diffuse kind of feeling, and oftentimes an echo will feel a little bit dry, even though it's already like a dimensional effect. It might feel a little bit dry and out of context. So adding a little bit reverb is always very nice, and having a reverb built into the echo is, I mean, the Ableton Echo tool is just fantastic, right? So if we look at the echo, it also has a sidechain, and it also has a sidechain with itself through the ducking. We don't need an extra compressor for that, right? So activating this and putting down the threshold will sidechain the echo with the input signal, which is everything we put in the ascent, right? Which is in this case only the lead, which means that was a long chain of a sentence, but still, which means that every time this sound plays, we get a long echo, but while it plays, the echo is also ducked away, right? And then in those gaps here, the echo kind of plays the rhythm again, which is also the reason why this needs to be quarter notes instead of like 16th note, for example, because the echo would repeat too fast and it wouldn't be the same effect, right? So now let's have a look at the MIDI notes. If we look at it from the beginning, so first of all, I said this before now, but we have the groove on here as well. It's very important. It's also very important that the echo has the groove, which means we need to have the groove in the original signal, like right on this lead track, so that the echo also is in groove. And yeah, if we look at the pattern, it's just this kind of rhythm, right? There's actually not much to say about this. There's probably like a few different ways that you could arrange those, but this is just a rhythm they've used in Mercury, and I was kind of copying this like here for 100%, and then here I thought we know this from maybe another Space 92 track, for example. The last EP on Filth on Acid featured those even faster notes to give it this kind of roll feeling. And I repeat them on every second repetition, right, of the theme, like here, 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 and here. And every fourth repetition gets this kind of difference. Like here, for example, we're going just on the +1. This is not what's happening in the Mercury track. This is just what I thought would be nice instead of going all the way up already. And then in the second one, I go all the way up to +3. And then +6, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, +6. And this is exactly the way that they do it in the original track. So you can see that we're also opening the envelope 2 decay. So what was envelope 2? It was the envelope on the noise and the filter, right? So that means when we're opening this decay, the sound will kind of feel much bigger because the filter is open for a longer time. And you can see that this automation is used quite a lot, and this is also the way they do it in the original. Like they would have one repetition with the envelope on the original like state, and then they would have another repetition with the envelope being more open and also opening up a little more over the time, I think. So this is what we're talking about, right? Last but not least, we have some FX sounds. Those are not too important, so we're just gonna go over them quickly. We have this reverse lead sound, which is a reverb from one of those sounds recorded and twisted, right? Gives it this very massive feeling. And then we have like some different FX, like a reversed 808 cymbal. We have a noise impact made from just regular noise. We have a clap shot from a regular 808. We have this click bass that if you like, you should check out my artist pack, because it's from my artist pack. It's available on our page weltsound.com in the shop. And yeah, that's basically it on the FX. So that's actually my kind of reinterpretation of the Mercury track by Hilo and Space 92. So what it is about, if I have to summarize it once again, it's a great combination of groove and techno feeling, right? So we have this kind of shuffled melody that also adds up to shuffled hi-hats, right? And the bass line is also shuffled, so everything feels a little like shaky, but still, because of the simpleness, right? We only have one note. I mean, we didn't talk about this yet, but we only have the G for almost every note that is played here, except for like little variations at the end of every 8 bar. So this makes it feel very techno. Also that this pattern kind of is just like, I mean, this is what Space 92 basically did for the last 1 or 2 years. He was using very easy bass plug patterns with heavy sounds that just feel like mesmerizing and just give a strong techno feeling, right? So another great track. What I want to show you as a last thing of this video, I promised you some mixing tips, and we're gonna have a look at this channel, which looks so simple. It's just a glue compressor. But let's have a listen to this send channel, right? It's New York compression. This is what NY comp means. And you can see that the full drum bass goes in there as well, the full lead, and a little bit of the FX. So we're kind of putting almost every sound in there, but not on the same level. And then we have this glue compressor on here with super short attack and an auto release, which could also be like, I mean, auto just works here. We have a ratio of 4 and a threshold kind of already a little lower than usual maybe. And let's have a listen to only the send channel. So what you can hear is that this is a very much compressed and also a little bit distorted version of the track, kind of. So we're taking away almost all the transient because of the very short attack. We're kind of compressing everything a lot because you can see there's like a lot of gain reduction happening actually. And we're kind of saturating the whole thing because we're driving it a lot into the soft clip. Like we add 13 dB. And that means the whole sound of the send is gonna run into that soft clip, which will make everything compress even more. Like you could even argue that's kind of limiting. And it will also add this kind of saturation to it. And because it's soft clipping, it's also kind of warm saturation, you could say. And the only thing we have to do now is control this with the volume of the send. So we could also add a utility, but we can't use the makeup because we want to have the high makeup for reaching the clip threshold. So we need another volume instance, like either a utility, or we could also take an EQ8, right, and use the gain and do some more additional stuff. Like a lot of times you would cut the low end a little bit, maybe also before, but that's like specifics that you can test out when you try this yourself. But New York compression, or it's also called parallel compression in general, is just so powerful. And I just want to show you this quick tip in this video at least, that the whole track, I mean, let's have a listen without the glue compressor. So we deactivate the channel here, right? So when we're talking about mixing, we're always talking about subtle changes, and you should definitely have your maybe headphones or very good studio speakers in a very good listening situation to check this out and really actually think about if you want to use this, because we're really talking about small stuff happening here. But adding this kind of quiet but very compressed send does something to the sound which is kind of like compression, but still keeps the transients. So you can think of it like this. Instead, we could have also sent all those tracks to one group, for example, like this. And then we could have put the glue compressor on the group. And that would result in a very overcompressed and completely distorted and destroyed track, right? But instead, what we're doing is we're like using the best of both worlds, so to say. We're using the strong compression, but we're also, I deleted the glue compressor, there it is, but we're also using the kind of more alive and natural sounding, not too compressed original sound, which has nice transients and a little more dynamic. So using both of this and kind of mixing it in the way we want to, like adding more or less of it when using the volume of the send here, right, is what kind of makes this so good, because we have, like, as I said before, the very compressed and the dynamic version, and we kind of mix it together. So try New York compression, try parallel compression for yourself, and look out for more mixing tips on the channel in the future, and also dedicated mixing videos. And also let us know if you want to see that. I hope you liked this little jam. It was a lot of fun to work with those nice elements, and I hope you could learn something from this video. Check out the free project. As I said before in the description, there's a lot more to learn if you have a look at this. And until then, I would say have a good time, keep making music, and see you for the next video.